Welcome to this special edition of the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit. Like with most things many of us have done over the last year and a half, part of the summit is going to happen online this year. We are delighted to have with us Sundar Pichai. Um, Usually when people are introducing someone who's reasonably famous, they say needs no introduction, but Sundar really needs no introduction in India. Uh, must be one of the most searched names on Google. Sundar might know more about that. Um, so, Sundar, thank you. We are delighted to have you here with us. Um, I'm going to jump right in and speak about um, some recent developments. And there's been a lot of talk in recent weeks of the metaverse after Facebook changed its name to Meta, and the metaverse, of course, seems straight out of science fiction, and it looks like. I'm still a little vague in my head as to what it means, like I'm sure lots of people are. But it looks to me that it's a combination of AI and AR, artificial intelligence and augmented reality. Can you tell us a bit more about it? And can you also tell us what Google sees in store for this future we're all moving towards, which has a mix of the virtual, a mix of the real, a mix of machine intelligence, a mix of human intelligence? What does it look like?
Well, Sukumar, first of all, pleasure to be with you, and great to be part of the Leadership Summit. It's a good question. Let me answer it from how, as Google, we think about computing evolving. We've always obviously been deeply involved in computing. Android powers over 3 billion devices, and mobile phones are still at the heart of how people primarily access computing. But it's always natural to me over time, rather than people adapting to computers and phones. Over time, computing will adapt more naturally to people. So which means you want people to be able to interact more naturally, like the way you see things and speak. All of that will play out in computing as well. So I think there's a natural way computing will be more immersive and ambient. It'll be there when you need it, not always as a black rectangle in front of you, right? And a part of that future is going to be AR, and today you have basic elements of AR. Maybe when you're wearing a watch, or as people are trying glasses with overlaid information. But I think over time, it'll be, as we make progress, it'll be more natural, and it won't interfere with you interacting with the real world. That's one of the promises of AR. But at times when you want to be immersive, it'll allow you to do that as well. And to do all that, I think AI is going to play a big part, as you said. And part of the reason, for example, when we think for that future, this is why we build things like Google Lens, being able to point your computer at something, and then it understand the world and answer back. So the recent announcement we made with Lambda at Google I/O last year is an example of really building a radically better conversational interface. All of that will end up playing an important role in the future of computing. But that's how we think about it. We'll drive computing forward. As part of that, I think different companies will build different things in that future world, and that's how I see. I think about what we as a company are doing, and it's exciting to think about it.
Has the pandemic sort of accelerated this process? Has it accelerated our acceptance of living virtually, working virtually, collaborating virtually? And does that sort of speed up this whole move towards a reality where, a lot of things that were previously offline, you're open to doing it online? Uh, I mean, everyone knew that people could work virtually, but I don't think anyone thought it could be done at this scale.
I mean, absolutely. I think definitely the trends. I mean, there is a massive adjustment that has happened, and I think a lot of it is going to stay. One way to look at it is, for example, in the US, when I talk to local hospitals here, the telehealth visits were less than 2 to 3% of the total visits pre-pandemic. It obviously spiked all the way to 70-80% during the pandemic, but it's not going to return to 3%. There's many aspects of it which are here to stay. So you look at that and you realize you've accelerated a few years of transition in a short time frame. So people have many things like what we are doing right now, and virtually. I do think there is a definite acceleration, but when it comes to the kind of trends we are talking about, some of it is constrained by computing and how you can get form factors designed in a way that it's natural for people. So there are some hard limitations which will take some time too. So, but I think users are adapting, and I think that will help with some of this evolution as well.
One of the other new things that we've heard a lot about is Web3, right? And which NFTs and crypto and everything else, and now people believe that Web3 could have greater applications in areas like recruitment, and that we've probably just scratched the surface. Again. My knowledge of this is extremely sketchy, and I have a feeling that a lot of people are still trying to get their hands around what Web3 is, what it means, and how it will change things. So can you please explain this whole Web3 buzz that's going around?
Well, I mean, it's all early and nascent, and it's exciting. Well, let me put it this way. I've always, been a fan of the web, and a lot of Google was built on the open web, and the web has gone through very exciting phases before. When we went from Web 1.0 to Web 2.0, a lot of it was the web shifting from content to rich interactive applications on the web, and that's what made things like Google Maps or Flickr or possible on the web. And to me, Web3 is early, but I think there is excitement around distributed architecture, maybe a decentralized architecture, payments built in more natively into the web, and a set of interesting ideas like that. But the web is a community, so at the end of the day, the web is going to evolve, and what that evolution is, is not. It's by the people who are actually building the web and contributing to the web. So you'll have to wait for it to play out. I always watch it with wonder, and I'm excited anytime the web is trying to evolve. It's a fascinating moment, and as a company, we think about how do we adapt, how can we contribute to it, and so that's the lens with which I look at it.
Someone I was speaking to the other day, again to try and understand what Web3 was, in the course of the conversation, mentioned that it's like your own private patch of the internet, where and that as a result, it could be safer, it could be more private, and you could pretty much define the rules there. Do you think that's an accurate way of looking at it, or at least one facet of it?
Look, I think it's too nascent for me to exactly specifically discuss how it'll turn out, but I think there are various proposals out there, and I think some of the exciting aspects of decentralization is being able to get to an architecture like what you're talking about. We have elements of privacy today. So when you have encrypted communications, right, that's a way of privacy on the web, and the web supports protocols like encryption, and so standards like encryption. And so I think you will see evolution along multiple dimensions. But to me, it is it's a democratic evolution of ideas, and out of which a future web will emerge, and that's what will be exciting to see.
At Alphabet, what are you most excited about? What are the things you're working on that you say like this is really going to change the world?
About 5 years ago, I set the company on an AI first approach. I felt we are at a point of inflection around AI, and it's one of the most profound technologies we are building. And it will literally go on to transform everything we do. So, we have tried hard to both build AI in a cutting edge way, actually deploy it in our products, be it search or maps, to build more helpful features. And I think the potential there is immense, and we see it across areas. So in healthcare, I think we will be able to better and earlier detect cancer, as an example. As DeepMind has shown with AlphaFold, we can accelerate drug discovery over time by better modeling protein structures. So I find, AI is very profound and something transformational across everything we do. But again, we are very early. And so that, when I take a long-term outlook, I want to make sure as a company I've always prided on the deep approach to technology we have, and that's something we are doing. I'm also excited that we are, through Google Cloud, we're bringing it to all companies in the world and providing APIs. So I think it's not just about transforming how our products work, but it's really helping other industries transform. So it's a big trend I'm excited by as well. And as part of that, we earlier talked about how it'll end up playing an important role in the future of computing, ambient computing, AR, and so we are interested in building out that experience. And I would say, in a time frame beyond that, we are barely scratching the surface of areas like quantum computing. And Google is again leading the way in quantum computing, and it'll take time, but it again opens up entire new potential set of applications which classical computing cannot solve. So these are all some of the trends I'm very excited by.
In India, on Diwali Day, your collaboration with Reliance for that phone, the new phone that you've launched with a made for India operating system, launched. And how do you see this market evolving? And what are the kind of prospects you see for a product like this?
Look, I'm very excited. For me, what that effort and our partnership with Reliance Jio in this particular case, there is. You mentioned the pandemic, and that digital shift. We are seeing more people accessing computing, trying to get mobile phones, and many of them are still on feature phones, and we are trying to design a high quality smartphone at affordable price points, but in a way that's localized for the needs of Indian market, right? And that's why it's a deep effort, right? We are not taking Android asses. We are investing in Android, for example, investing in AI to do translation better, bringing Google Lens so that people can, and Google Voice, so that people can actually interact with the device in many languages in an easier way. So we're designing something for the local market in partnership with Reliance, who deeply understands the market too, and we are trying to push the boundaries there. In my long experience, anytime you work on something like this, it takes time to play out, but the impact ends up being big, because it profoundly impacts the ability for many people to get access to computing and to this digital journey. And in that way, I think it's an exciting part of the Digital India vision, and will end up being an accelerant for it over time. But it's the first step in that process, and couldn't be more excited. We have a phone out, and we'll continue iterating and building.
What are the other new things you're looking at in India? What do you want to try out here? Where do you see big opportunities here?
India's, for a few years, I had felt coming to India, whenever I would meet entrepreneurs there, I could see the potential of the startup ecosystem and what's possible in India. And, it's heartening to see the number of startups now which are, proving themselves on a global stage, and the unicorns that are getting created. So it's an exciting time in India. For us, I want to help in a few ways. Last year, we committed $10 billion to the India Digitization Fund. And as part of that, we want to support companies in India, solving newer things. We want to provide them with AI and technologies and platforms so that they can scale up their ideas and reach more users. A lot of our services would allow people to export outside of India as well. So we are investing in foundational infrastructure like that. Third, I view India as a place over time we will be able to build things and take it globally. The first example of that for us was Google Pay. Looking at what had happened in India with UPI, understanding India is going to be ahead of everyone else in digital payments. We invested in Google Pay, and the foundation of that app and experience is what is making its way to our other markets around the world. And so both I'm excited about building for India first, and also building in India to solve problems globally as well. And I think that's an exciting new phase. But above all, I would say what we do will end up being a small portion compared to the scale of the innovation I see in India across the ecosystem. And I think we will play a strong enabling role, be it through Google Cloud, be it through the AI technologies we provide, or be it towards expanding Android and supporting the market with initiatives like the JioPhone.
Regulation is one area where there's been it's an evolving space, much like many of the other things, and I think as technology companies such as yourself, your company Alphabet has evolved, I think there have been lots of issues with many governments around the world in it, because I just think that they have a certain regulatory regime, and I think the regime needs to evolve with the times, and this results in a lot of back and forth. How do you see the evolving regulatory regime? And it must be reasonably difficult, let's say, for a company like Alphabet, because you have multiple regulatory regimes around the world, and there is no one standard that or is there a standard? I know the EU has a standard, which is a fairly decent standard, but how does it work for you?
Look, it's an important moment. I think as tech has scaled up and tech is touching people's lives in a deeper way, it's natural that there needs to be rules of the road, and so I think it's a natural part of the process. And I think it makes sense to me that countries think about the concerns of its own citizens and wants regulations to make sure it works well for their people. And so I think all of that makes sense to me. Through it all, it's important to understand we have this amazingly wonderful thing, which is a free and open internet, which helps connect the world in a global way and creates all the opportunities we see. And I think that's the balance with which we need to engage and work through. I think where we can find regulations which helps support the open exchange of ideas, the way the internet works today, is obviously ideal. But it makes sense that countries have, democratic countries have, are thinking through what makes sense for their country, with citizens empowered to do that. And so, you both are important, and I think the balance is important. You're right. As a large company, we deal with many countries around the world. I view it as an important role for Google to be local and engage in every country with the best interest of the country too. And so I think that's an important principle with which I approach this. But as part of that, where we can encourage commonality, we strive to do that. So if you take privacy, for example, in GDPR, there's a lot of strong foundations, and hopefully, that can be a good starting point for many countries around the world. And so we advocate for that, and as an example. But we are deeply committed to engaging in every country locally, complying with local laws, and so it's a part of the process we need to engage through, and I'm committed to doing that well.
I'm just going to take a step back and look at it in a slightly broader way. traditionally, data and information and the use and the control, for want of a better word, of data and information has been the purview of the state traditionally, even in democracies. And increasingly, you have a lot of large technology companies which deal in lots of data and deal in lots of information, and who have the ability to be the sort of gatekeepers to this thing. So the relationship between these two is, to my mind, bound to be antagonistic. So how do you find a sort of a middle path in this?
I think, look, at the end of the day, people will demand certain experiences. Companies will, many companies in a country also want to participate in the global export economy, right? You're not only operating within the context of your country. So there are natural forces which will pull in an interoperable way. You're right, and governments want sovereignty over things that affect the lives of their citizens, and so I think the conversation. I mean, it's tough to answer it in abstract. I think these things will evolve depending on what the underlying use cases are, how important it is, and over time. So to give an example, through COVID, the fact that data from Israel around vaccine efficacy getting shared with rest of the world, all that is helpful, right? And so you have to, but at the same time, health data is exceptionally important. The privacy of it is sacrosanct, but you have to figure out ways and frameworks for all of this to work together, right? And but you can solve it in the context of that specific issue. So I think over time, regulations need to take into account the industries, the purpose of what they're trying to solve, and there's no one answer. You're rightfully calling out that there will be tensions through a process like this, but that makes sense. That's natural. But I think over time we have to work to find common answers.
You've repeatedly used the term open internet, and there are times when the need for this balance, as you said, and I remember that over the summer when India released its own rules, guidelines for internet companies, you again emphasized that the free and open internet is foundational to your company, and that you have to strike a balance between that and the evolving regulatory regime. But there are times when these two seem to be at odds, right? I mean, and at which point, what do you do, or do you go case by case?
Look, I mean, we approach it. We're going to approach it constructively, and as I said, we want to approach it with the view of making sure the work we are doing is helpful to the people in the context of the country in which we operate, and that's a principle with which we will approach these things. And I think just even in India, there are Indian companies. I talked about the unicorns emerging over time. I expect many of them to be able to scale up and tap into markets and grow, on the internet, and that's what some of the benefits of the open internet provides. And so I think it's important to think about it holistically, and and that's part of how a country has to think about its regulations.
On the issue of regulation, to drill down to specifics, there's been a lot of talk of regulating user engagement, the kind of content, the kind of things that people engage with online using engagement-based algorithms. And the idea is to, let's say, prevent the spread of conspiracy theories. And you have a few. You have a few in my country. You have a few in your country, right? I mean, it's everywhere. A lot of companies have faced issues with this. I mean, your own YouTube has also faced some issues related to this. What's your view on engagement-based algorithms? Do you think you need to sort of refine them? This is a constant process where you make sure that conspiracy theories, fake information are not amplified?
This is at the foundation of what we do as a company. This is our mission to organize the world's information. This is what we do in search constantly. On a given day, 15% of queries we have never seen before, right? And so figuring out how to elevate high quality information is what we've been doing as a company for the past 23 years, and it's the same principles we've brought to YouTube. And so, and again, it is so dynamic and so changing fast. None of us had any notion of COVID, 2 years ago. To adapt to COVID, and the way we approach it is take a vertical like that, consult with experts, develop new policies. In many cases, we elevate information for example, in a given country, we elevate information from local health authorities, from journalistic organizations. These are all ways by which we approach an area like this. We've added a lot of transparency. We publish violated view rates in YouTube, and so we give transparency. I think countries can pass legislation, both asking for more transparency, making sure we can respond to users. There is an accountability mechanism. These are all interesting ideas, and can be evolved. But I would be careful about the inherent dynamic nature of this and how fast it's evolving at an internet scale. Companies need the flexibility to be able to adapt and move with certainty and make decisions to tackle problems like this as well. So I think it's an important area, to keep looking at over time.
Privacy. And it's an issue that keeps coming up both at the level of individuals and at the level of governments. And do you think there are misunderstood perceptions about privacy? Do you think there are any fallacies about privacy? And how do you deal with them?
Well, privacy is foundational, and it kind of underlies all our approach. We've always viewed as we are stewards of users' data. The data belongs to people, and we want to take care of it on their behalf. And when you look at products like Gmail, and we've been doing it. We work so hard to protect user data in products like that. I think I wouldn't say it's an important area. I wouldn't say it's misunderstood. Overwhelmingly, people's privacy expectations are constantly evolving. And all of us need to challenge ourselves to provide people with the experiences they are seeking for while enhancing privacy. So, and we've been working hard on techniques like that. And so, for example, in the Google keyboard on your Android phones, we use a technique called federated learning, whereby, we compute models locally on the device and update a global model without any raw data actually leaving your device. But we can improve, typing suggestions for everyone globally. These are all examples of privacy preserving techniques. So I wouldn't say there is misperception, but I think what is counterintuitive is over time, AI will help you give more privacy because we can do more with less data. Privacy is actually hard to engineer for. You have to program privacy in a complex way. So over time, I think it'll get easier, to improve privacy. I think it's important. Users will demand it, and I think the bar will keep going up. And so, as companies, I think you have to dig deep to make sure you're doing, you're innovating on privacy preserving approaches.
Companies such as yours are, you deal with billions of consumers, right? And there is a view that you have extremely good and extremely sophisticated information on how people react to circumstances, people react to products, people react to situations, and that this knowledge needs to be opened up for better academic understanding of how societies are evolving. And that popular culture, the minute people start writing fiction about you, and there have been quite a few books out, right? And I don't know whether you've read Dave Eggers, and he has a new book out. What is Google's stand on this? Do you think it makes sense to share this kind of information? Would you be open to doing it? Because I think it would provide let's say, a fascinating view of how society is evolving, because companies like yours, and I don't know whether you'll agree with me when I say this, but you actually have you shape the evolution that we are seeing around us in society.
Well, look, part of the reason, as a company, we do provide data and API. I mean, Google Trends is an important API we provide. As part of sustainability, we are working with 500 cities around the world to help give data insights to them about where emissions are occurring. Through COVID, we launched community mobility reports so that local governments had a sense of how people are moving about and can develop policies on that. We've always believed in the power of engaging, giving data where helpful, and it's something we will continue to do. Even when we work on areas like AI, we publish. We both participate in open source. We deploy many open source projects. We publish and collaborate closely with academic organizations, right? And we are one of the leading research publishers on AI. And I think that is important. But I think, governments themselves, one of the power of cloud and AI is, governments have access to more data than anyone else in an important way. Take traffic in cities. Using that to better make traffic flow and cut down on pollution. That's an example of governments being able to use data in a way no one else can. Healthcare is another area. Governments have access to more data. The role I see there is providing technology platforms, tools, and solutions to help governments do that. So I agree with the premise of the question that data is an important way by which you can get insights and tackle new problems. And where we can be enablers of that, we want to, and that's how we approach it.
You announced last year that Google plans to transition to 24/7 carbon-free power by 2030. Can you share some details on this with us?
No, I'm very, very excited that we are working on, what is a moonshot, and there is no more urgent issue for us to solve together as humanity than climate change. And I was excited to see more momentum coming out of COP26, and it is something which affects all of us together. So it's a shared journey and a shared problem to solve. It is, for me personally, it's an area where I want to spend the company's time on. I think over time it'll be a big opportunity as well. Google we've been carbon neutral since 2007. And for the past many years, we've matched all our energy consumption with renewable energy. But we are now trying to take that next step, which is to operate 24/7 carbon free. That means every email you send or a YouTube video you watch uses no carbon in that process. And to do that, wind and solar alone won't be enough. We are investing in new technologies like geothermal. Over time, we'll be looking at emerging technologies, be it nuclear, be it carbon capture. So we are evaluating everything, and to solve it around the world on a 24/7 basis will force us to invest in R&D and catalyze new projects locally in countries. And so we did this with wind and solar early on. We invested in completely new projects at the earliest stage of the cost curve, and so contributed to it. I want to do the same for the next decade ahead. AI, which I spoke about, itself will play a foundational role in helping us develop newer solutions. So it is, beyond our core products, it's the moonshot I'm most excited by, and something I'm deeply committed to, deploying Google's resources to help solve the problem.
You've been at Google for 17 years now, and it's clearly evolved in this period. Search, mail, advertising, the whole shift to mobile OS. How has the company changed in this time? How does it see itself now? As its mission changed, as the way it looks at things changed?
I'll talk about a few things which I think haven't changed and what has changed. And you mentioned the mission. I feel fortunate that our mission feels as timeless as ever. You asked many important questions about information quality, misinformation, organizing information, in a way that works for people, continues to be our defining mission and moonshot. And so I feel fortunate, that it's timeless. The first thing that struck me about the company when I joined the company was how optimistic it was. At Google, you had an idea, everyone thinks about how to make that idea better, and they want to help you solve it. I still feel that today, walking around, and that it's what allows us to innovate. That hasn't changed. Our belief that by investing deeply in technology and R&D and applying it, you can do amazing things hasn't changed. We've invested $100 billion in R&D in just the past 5 years alone. And I get a lot of pride in knowing that we are doing deep foundational technology work. So all that hasn't changed. What has changed, obviously, is the scale of the company. With scale comes, you have the opportunity to be long-term focused and tackle bigger problems. There's a reason we can take on a problem like being 24/7 carbon-free. And so, it allows you to have new opportunities. It also, you have challenges in terms of being able to engage and explain and move nimbly at the same speed as you did 20 years ago. So those are all the things you have to work hard. Scale gives you more opportunity. It also creates complexity. And so tackling that is what changes, and what, I spend a lot of time making sure we can continue to do that well.
General Electric got broken up, right? And or is in the process of getting broken up. And there was a time when the US industrial landscape was dominated by conglomerates, and everyone thought conglomerates was the way to go. And there is a view that companies such as Alphabet are the new conglomerates. And do you see any parallels? Do you see any learnings?
I think at a high level, first of all, we don't operate as a conglomerate. We are deeply investing in technology and building products. But I think the bigger point you're making is, in technology, you have to earn your success every year. The pace of change. In fact, at any given time, you go back and look 20 years ago and see the successful companies. It takes a lot for a company to stay at that level over a period of time. And I look at the landscape. There is more opportunity than ever before. There is more competition than ever before. It's become easier to start newer companies than ever before. And innovation is happening at a rapid pace. And so as a company, I think, every year we think about digging deep and making sure we are building things which are helpful to people, true to our mission, and doing it in a differentiated way. And that's how you earn success every year. And I think that will always be true, particularly in technology. And, so I think, it's what we strive to do on an ongoing basis.
We've spoken about what next for Google. We've spoken about what next for Alphabet. We've spoken about what next for the internet, for India. What next for Sundar Pichai?
I feel it's a privilege to be, leading a company which has the chance to impact the lives of so many people. And, I get a lot of joy and energy from it. Just the last conversation around climate change and the chance for Google to make a lasting impact there alone, gets me up every morning, and I couldn't be more excited by it.
Sundar Pichai, thank you very much.
Thank you.